There's a lot of talk online right now about how often men think about the Roman Empire, which I guess is a lot. I personally don't, but I have unconventional tastes, Anastasia. My Roman Empire is Universal's failed rival to Disney's Marvel Cinematic Universe, the Dark Universe. There is nothing I wanted more in this life than Dark Universe to exist. Because if there's one thing about me, I'm gonna want to see monsters, and I'm gonna want to see them mash. But there are dreams that cannot be. And Universal fumbled pretty hard when trying to create their answer to Disney's Marvel Cinematic Universe, or Warner Brothers' DC Shared Universe. For those who don't remember, in the mid 2010s, Universal announced that they were going to be rebooting their much beloved Universal Monsters franchise with new movies and an Avengers style mashup of these icons of horror. Before filming even began, we had casts. Johnny Depp was going to be the Invisible Man. Javier Bardem was going to be Frankenstein's monster. Universal desperately wanted Angelina Jolie for The Bride of Frankenstein, giving her a chance to direct a movie of her choosing in order to coax her into the role. But from the beginning, they were on shaky ground. Universal fell victim to the same problems a lot of studios did while trying to compete with the MCU, which is establish a franchise before you have your first film. Obviously, for a shared universe, you do want to have some idea of where you're going, but you should really focus on your first film to make sure it's as good as it possibly can be so that people will want to see more. Universal decided to try another way. Prior to the announcement, Universal was working on Dracula Untold, an origin story for Count Dracula. When they decided they wanted some of those sweet Marvel level dollars, they did some hasty reshoots to make it so that Dracula Untold could be part of their dark universe if people liked it. And if it did well, you're probably thinking, wow, that's a really bad idea for your franchise starter to potentially be irrelevant to your franchise. And it is a bad idea. You're right to feel that way. The film had an estimated $75 million budget and only grossed $56 million in the US. The international box office did help, but clearly Americans were not here for this. Which is a problem if you want to set up your franchise to appeal to one of the largest markets in the world. But that's fine. Universal decided they were going to push forward, and they were going to start for real this time with The Mummy. The film was set in modern day, and we were going to meet the Mummy, a woman this time, and we were going to be introduced to Dr. Jekyll as our twisted version of Nick Fury, who runs Prodigium. I'm actually not sure about how it's pronounced. I did watch the movie, but I'll get to that later. Prodigium is a secret society that hunts supernatural threats. It was setting up all the cool things in this world and all the cool monsters we'd get to see. And to help this film out, they got one of the most bankable people in Hollywood, someone whose name usually means big bucks. Tom Cruise. He plays Nick, an army sergeant who also steals artifacts to sell on the black market. He's a bad boy, you see. But he also has a heart of gold, because there's a likable friend and a sexy lady to keep him grounded. The film is honestly pretty boring, and even trying to rewatch it for this one, I was struggling and really checked out by the third act. To give it a fair shake, there are things I like. In particular, the stunt that they do with the airplane is really well done. That must have taken a lot of work to coordinate and film, and it's really impressive. It's a really, really cool scene. I like Annabelle Wallis, not necessarily in this movie. Her character isn't well written or exciting, but I liked the show Pan Am, and she was a recurring character on that, and so I like her in things now because I liked her in that. And I liked the guy who played Tom Cruise's buddy. I liked him in New Girl as well, but I liked him in this. I thought he was good. I thought he was well cast. It is a shame most of his scenes are him being dead and talking to Tom Cruise. Obviously, it's an homage to An American Werewolf in London, but the whole time you're watching those scenes, you're like, oh, yeah, American Werewolf in London is a better movie. And that's it. 3 things is not a lot of things, but it's something. Tom Cruise is grossly miscast. His character feels like it was written for someone much younger, and Cruise's movie persona makes it impossible for us to believe that he is ever going to struggle with this new darkness inside him, since his first 2 acts as someone with the powers of a god is to bring back to life his likable friend and the sexy lady who both die. What a great way to start your horror franchise off. There are no life and death stakes for your heroes because your main character can just bring people back to life. Wow. I think I can pretty safely narrow down the two major problems, though, with this film. First, setting the film in modern day is a bad choice. Horror movies have always spoken to cultural anxieties, but today's horror movies speak to something a little bigger than the idea of the monster as an other, attacking normal people. A mummy shambling around London is not going to be that engaging for a modern audience, especially if we're supposed to be rooting for the grave robber who released it. Second, don't start with the mummy! This one I do kind of get where Universal was coming from. In 2010, they released The Wolfman, with a stacked cast that didn't break even. And of course, they had Dracula Untold, which may or may not have been included in the franchise, but they certainly weren't going to make a different one right away. They seemed really hell-bent on getting Angelina Jolie to agree to Bride of Frankenstein after they saw what she did for Disney with Maleficent, and they seemed unwilling to find someone else to make that movie at that time, holding out hope they would get her to agree. So that just leaves Frank and The Mummy as your A-list options. Gillman and Invisible Man are usually added to kind of round out a Monster Mash cast. But 1999's The Mummy is still very much a beloved movie. And to start your new franchise with a reboot of a fan favorite franchise and an extremely popular attraction at your parks is just a bad idea. So of course the film bombed, taking in $80 million against a $125 million budget in the US. Again, the international box office did help, but it was clear that they were never going to be able to get this franchise off the ground. The other projects were turned into other films, and Dark Universe was officially dead. Or was it? Yes, it was. But they made it up to me specifically in a way I appreciate. Halloween Horror Nights is an event I love, and in 2018, Universal Studios Hollywood created a Universal Monsters house. The monsters teamed up in an old-school setting to terrorize guests. We had everybody: Quasimodo, the Phantom, Dracula and his brides, Frank, the Mummy, the Invisible Man, the Bride, the Wolfman. It was great. It was so popular, the next year they brought it over to Universal Studios Florida and added my personal favorite, Gillman. But Universal was not done, and for that I am forever thankful. Over the next few years, Universal was going to keep giving us monster mashes, with different pair-ups and different plot lines that I just live for. And so, for those who don't know, here they are. The first one was Universal Monsters: The Bride of Frankenstein Lives. It takes place immediately after the Bride of Frankenstein movie, with the bride having survived Frank destroying the lab and now standing among the rubble and screaming. She decides that she loves him now, which, okay, as a side note, I don't love. The Bride of Frankenstein is only in her own movie for about 5 minutes at the end, and the only thing she does in the movie is reject Frankenstein. So I don't love that her sequel is her undoing the one decision she makes in the first movie, but that's fine, it's not a movie. Anyway, she decides she loves him and now wants to bring him back because he's dead. So she uses the doctor's notes to try to bring him back. She has her own assistant, a female Igor, and the best part of all is who she gets mashed up with: the Brides of Dracula. Honestly, brilliant. No notes. They just never get to shine on their own outside of Dracula, so this was great. She's capturing the Brides of Dracula because she needs their vampire blood to revive Frank, and to keep them alive, she feeds them villagers. She brings back Frank, a big battle with the brides, good times all around. The house was actually used twice, in 2020 and 2021. In 2022, we got Universal Monsters Legends Collide in both Hollywood and in Orlando. I'll be honest, visual storytelling was not this house's strong suit, so I did need to look up the Halloween Horror Nights wiki in order to get the plot of this one. Lawrence Talbot, the Wolfman, is told by a mysterious benefactor that there is an amulet in Egypt that will cure his lycanthropy.
This is lycanthropy.
Unfortunately, he's just not great at planning this trip, and it coincides with a full moon, so he is a werewolf in Egypt. I'm not a moon scientist, but I feel like we know when those happen. This probably could have been avoided. Anyway, there's also a high priest who is resurrecting the mummy at the same time. The mummy and the Wolfman fight, and that mysterious benefactor turns out to be Dracula. And he wants the amulet so he can walk during the daytime. I'm not sure what the mummy gets out of all this. There were a couple cool things about this house, in that each night would have a different ending, with one of the three being the victor and the dead bodies of the other two being shown. The other interesting thing about this house is that it was actually a two-parter. The Orlando version was the first part, and the Hollywood version was the second part. The second part is a little more easy to follow, moving the action to Europe and the three of them fighting over the amulet in various places. And the Brides of Dracula return, so that's exciting. Continuation, love to see that. This year, perhaps because the last one was so popular but not really coherent, the story is made much simpler, and they have the Invisible Man, the Phantom, Dr. Jekyll, and Quasimodo terrorizing Paris. This is less of a monster mash, as they don't really seem to be fighting, more that they are connected by the sewers, catacombs of Paris. They appear to be murdering the people of Paris in different, violent ways, and you can see each scene by going through Paris's underground. The point of all this is to say that someone at Universal understands what people wanted from the Dark Universe. They want to see the monsters be the stars, giving us new storylines for these characters. It also helps the brand, as they'll be building a land in their new Epic Universe park that will be focused on the monsters. Oh. Ooh. My light went out. Spooky. So, this video ended up being a little more meta than I intended because, much like Universal had to do with Dracula Untold, I also have to do some hasty reshoots on my ending. So, here we are in a new location. I still have a monster-themed attire, so yeah, we should be good to go. So this section of the video is going to be about what I would do if I were in charge of the Dark Universe. I've thought about this every day for like 10 years now, so this is my curse. Hopefully this frees me from it and I can move on with my life. This is my version of lycanthropy. Ow! It's just me becoming a really boring person who only talks about failed studio projects. The Dracula ears are throwing me. It gives me like alien ears. I'm gonna go over here. So to start, I would set these in the past. For me personally, I would do the 1930s to go with when these movies were kind of at their heyday when they were first beginning from Universal Studios. Halloween Horror Nights keeps them into the late 1800s, early 1900s, and that really works. Alternatively, you could also set it in the 50s and use them as sequels to the Mummy franchise. Obviously, when they made The Mummy in 2017, they were hoping that the brand was strong enough that people would want to see another movie, even if it was unrelated to the Mummy series from the 90s and the 2000s. Clearly it wasn't, but if you set it in the 50s as sequels to the Mummy movie, you may be able to show us where life has taken these characters and have them help our heroes on their journey. I think that would be a really cool thing to do. If you're gonna have it take place in the 1950s, you can even start with the Gill Man. Even though he's not an A-lister, his movie did come out in the 50s, and if you're setting them as sequels to the Mummy film, a Gill Man movie would keep the same adventurous spirit of the 1999 Mummy. You would just have a new location and new characters. Each of these films needs to be about something. They need to have a theme that directly relates to the monster. So, for example, the Gill Man, it's been pointed out, has a theme of environmentalism and mankind invading nature. You could make the monsters sympathetic. We need to want to see these monsters get together. So the monster needs to be a little deeper than just a villain who terrorizes villagers. One way you can achieve that is what I call the Jurassic Park method. Think of this like a triangle. At the top of your triangle, you have the Universal monsters. These are going to be like the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park. They're both a spectacle and a threat, but they aren't the antagonists. They're a more neutral party. They're just existing in the world. In one corner, you have our hero. If you want to make the monsters sympathetic, you should have our heroes be othered by society in some way. Think like a BK Kids level of diversity. And each one will have a special skill that will help in the adventure. Maybe one is a doctor, one is an inventor, one is a medium, one is an adventurer type. And maybe each hero has a corresponding monster. So there's something within each hero that relates to the monster. And each hero could have a lesson that needs to be learned as part of the theme of your monster movie. So your character will have a starting point and then be changed by the events of the film. In the other corner, you have the antagonists, either a person or a group of people. Jurassic Park always had a human threat to both our heroes and the dinosaurs. True villainy isn't a gill man just existing in nature away from people. It's man's greed or hubris or something. But let's say Universal Studios doesn't want to make their monsters sympathetic. Well, you can still use the triangle method to make them a little less sympathetic and a little less neutral. Maybe each monster protects a MacGuffin, something that both our heroes and our antagonists want. You can still have your theme and character growth, just now the monster is protecting something that can't fall into the wrong hands. This also gives the monsters more agency, and it gives them an incentive to match in order to protect the things that they're guarding. And finally, if you want to make your monster your only villain, we need to start with a monster whose goal it is getting the monsters together. I think a good way to do this would be to start with a couple of doctors, say Dr. Frankenstein and Dr. Jekyll. Maybe one of them becomes seduced by the darkness and they set out a goal to collect all the monsters to destroy humanity or whatever the goal is. So then you have a story about not only a hero who's trying to stop whatever the villain is trying to do, but there's also a connection. They still want to save their friend too. And so that could create a compelling drama. I don't know. Universal should have hired me for this. This feels like a no-brainer. It's shocking that their monster reboot went this badly when the property is so beloved. I don't know how they managed to screw up at every turn, but they did. Universal, I'm still available if you want me. I have a lot of free time. That's why I'm doing YouTube videos now. So yeah, hit me up. Do people still do this? No, right? Because phones don't look like this. It's probably like, hit me up. I don't know how to end this. I never knew how to end this. I just like, the other ending wasn't good either. You're not missing anything with that footage. So thanks for watching.
And then we'll start talking.
I guess I'm not like other girls. For those who don't remember, what was the line?